Everybody. Thanks for joining us in this session. We are here with Sergio Sykes from Insomniac Games. And we are here to talk about everything career and games related that might be useful to you. So with that, I wanted to make sure that we start off with introduction to both of us. So let me begin, and then I will hand it over to Sergio. So today on this panel, you have me. I'm the lead faculty at Digital Media Arts at San Jose City College, and Sergio Sykes, who's the senior character TD at Insomniac Games. So my background, if you've been in my class, you kind of know a little bit about it, but I'll just go through all that I've done very quickly. I have a background in zoology and animation. I have a mix of everything, and I have been a game animator for most of my career before coming to academics. In academics, I have built this program, the Digital Media Arts program in this college, and I've been about 16 years now in academics, and I've taught four-year colleges and master's programs. I also own my own company. I'm a founder and CEO of Bits, Bytes, and Pixels, where we run after-school programs, and a lot of San Jose City College graduates have worked for me in the past. I volunteer at ACMC Graph, where I do work as a lifelong learning chair. And I have been building an online university called SeaGraph University. And my expertise goes in motion graphics, animation, but I'm a mainly 3D person with a very good hand-on graphic design areas. So that's me. And I wanted to show you the games I've worked on prior to my academic life. And I have worked on Sega, Factor 5, some of the big name companies back in the days. And I've worked on some Marvel Ultimate Alliance type of games, fantasy games, platform, AAA titles. But I specialize in beast fantasy characters. That's my forte, as my background is zoology. So that's me. Let me hand it over to Sergio.
Hi, I'm Sergio Sykes. I am a character TD, senior character TD over at Insomniac Games. I've known Janali for a long time, so happy to be here. I'm pretty much been doing rigging ever since coming out to college way back when, and got into the industry for mostly rigging, a little bit rigging, technical animation. They're kind of interchangeable, but I also do like a lot of scripting on the side, using various languages, depending on the game engine like Python, Unreal, so forth and so forth. And as far as education goes, I was at Art Institute of California in San Francisco, and I also had like some more education from Rigging Dojo. I've been in the industry for over 18 years, or almost 18 years now. And also did like a little bit of teaching at one point, teaching character rigging. And yeah, that's pretty much me. As far as games I worked on, I started out at a company called Massive Black that did like a lot of outsourcing to other companies. And during that time, I worked on titles such as Dead to Rights, James Bond Bloodstone, Pirates Online, and more recently, I switched over to Insomniac Games back in 2016. And from that point forward, I became part of the team working on Spider-Man titles. And so I worked on Spider-Man PS4 as well as Spider-Man Remastered, a little bit of Spider-Man Miles Morales, and most recently Spider-Man 2.
Thank you, Sergio. All right, so let's begin. I have a few questions, guys, and towards the end of it, I'm hoping to have more time to ask free questions for Mr. Sykes. If you have anything, feel free. We are keeping it very casual. As Sergio mentioned, we have known each other for ages now, from pretty much my first job at Factor 5. So it's been many, many years, 2 decades by now. So we keep things very casual. We're both gamers. So we don't keep I'm a professor now, but we're still basically gamers. So keep it very casual. Jump in at the end of it when we get through the questions, but we'll have more question time for you. So please bring anything you want to ask. All right, Sergio, first question for you. What is a character TD? You mentioned you work as a character technical artist, senior character technical artist. So we want to know what character TD is, and tell us about your current job, the work that you do at Insomnia Games, and your experience climbing up the game industry pipeline to where you're today.
Oh, certainly. So I guess like going into character TD, it's sort of niche role, but a very important role that also has a lot of demand, not only in the game industry, but pretty much every industry that features computer animation. But really, like the best analogy I can usually give to just like layman's terms is to if you see animation as being kind of like the puppeteer with puppet strings, character TD is sort of being the puppet maker as far as like taking a character, figure out the rules and guidelines for how the character is going to move around and articulate, and kind of creating like an interface for animators to be able to take that character and actually give it a performance. As far as my career goes, yeah, currently I'm at Insomniac Games. I just finished shipping Spider-Man 2, working on some fun new projects coming up. Yeah, that's been pretty great. And as far as getting into the industry, uh, yeah, I think I just had like a pretty humble beginning. Like I started, I originally went to a 2-year college where I studied computer science. And well, I feel like the trajectory was pretty good for me. I did get an off. I did see an advertisement for like something more game specific out in San Francisco, and that's when I transferred colleges to the Art Institute and completed my education there in visual and game programming. And while I still went on a programming track there, I did find out more about character rigging, which is the process I kind of a character CD does, and it really fascinated me because I really like work. I always like the character performances in games. Like I think the game that really struck a chord with me at that time or was Silent Hill 2. That was like one of the games I first remember like the characters being very realistic and believable. And the process that went into that was just very interesting to me. And it kind of uh planted the seed for getting more into the character rigging. As well as animation was pretty fun for me, but I wasn't very good at it. As far as I didn't really see a talent for me there, but I really enjoyed the process of how the rigs worked, and I got more into playing around with those. And so yeah, like once I kind of figured things out, I was able to get an internship at Massive Black, and that internship turned into a job once I graduated, and then I stayed there for a very long time, and then eventually I moved on to other things. I worked at a tech company for a bit, and then Insomniac Games.
I wanted to just add to that because I mentioned at the earlier when we introduced ourselves, I mentioned to you all that we are going to keep these very casual because we've been friends for a very long time and we're both gamers. So in that spirit, I was just going to add that when he was doing his internship at Massive Black, I was doing mine at a game company called Factor 5. Both of us got our start similar way, internship. So that's how I got in, he got in. This is a great way to do. We are talking games today. However, it applies to all of you guys. Internships, apprenticeships, anything of that sort. So as we go forward today, we talk a lot about career and how to break into the industry. So keep your thoughts towards the end if you have time. If you have any thoughts, we will address that. So I wanted to just leave it open for you. And also about character TDs. I, as a 3D animator in games, couldn't have done my job without them. They put the bones in there for me to be able to animate the characters. So it's a very interesting thing. So let's move on. I have a lot more interesting questions up ahead. The next question, Sergio. Um, what are the current trends in the game industry? Tell us about the state of the industry in general.
Industry's in an interesting place right now. I think the big thing that's on a lot of people's minds is the implications of AI. AI is a huge time saver in a lot of ways, but it also has like some ethical issues as far as like the use cases go. So while it's never going to like just completely go away, I do think there's a lot to learn as far as how to take AI and leverage it for your own development or education. Because it's to me, for my takeaway from interacting with like ChatGPT and things similar is that it's kind of like the next level of like a Google search, and treating it like that, I think goes a long way as far as like um getting to the answers you want faster, essentially. So that's like the biggest trend I see. As well as there's still like a big push for hyperrealism in games specifically. Yeah, the new systems have been out for a while. Games are still kind of raising the bar. You've seen with like not to toot my own horn, but Spider-Man 2, they did a really good job in that regard. We're seeing some games coming out in the near future, such as Hellblade 2. I think I saw a trailer recently for the new Hideo Kojima game, Death Stranding 2. That looks amazing. So yeah, I think there's still like a push to uh, get that very like hyper realistic quality. And movies are still doing that same thing too, but I do feel like the things are a bit more neck and neck between games and film and TV as far as like that visual performances go. So on the plus side, I think the skills are more interchangeable
Mm-hmm.
nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
where before going from games to film and back again was a very arduous process. You had to kind of unlearn everything and then relearn it again if you make that switch. But nowadays I'm seeing people from film plugging into games pretty quickly because Unreal is often used in games or used in film, and vice versa because like yeah, real-time engines are being used more in shows and film. There's not interchangeability as far as the game skill set applying to like yeah working possibly in film or TV or tech.
So you mentioned AI. So at Insomnia Games, do you use a proprietary software? Are you talking Maya? What software do you use?
And it's not that we have our own game engine, so it does all the cool stuff. But as far as AI goes, it's still something I think the industry in general is still kind of experimenting with before like actually using it anywhere.
I asked because we use Photoshop in our programs, and then AI has been a big part of Photoshop in the recent years. So we're seeing it. All Adobe software is coming up with an AI component to it. You can do pretty fancy stuff, but I don't use it as often. Again, same reason. It's new and still very experimental, but it saves a ton of time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm not really a big user of like those like wizards of like kind of doing the work for you, but I do think there's a lot of potential in terms of if you have a question or something you're stuck on, having AI be able to help you find an answer a little bit faster than the older means, which is like a Google search, especially if you didn't have someone who was knowledge sitting next to you.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
goes a long way.
absolutely. All right, next question. How to get into the industry? What worked for you as an entry-level artist and what didn't?
I got into the industry, I think basically because my background was in computer science and even like I had like a programming degree. I think my coding skills was a very good bullet point in my resume because even today, like programming is still like it's always in demand, even though that wasn't like what I was going into. But the fact that I was in my resume just always got me on the top of like a lot of like interview piles, essentially. So yeah, that background really helped me a lot, as well as yeah, I did like a lot of work in college to make a good reel after I kind of realized what I wanted to do. But as far as things that didn't work, surprisingly, I know networking is usually touted in soft skills is really touted as like a very important thing. And while I did work with those and I did get some benefits out of that, I did find that networking in general, at least the way I was approaching it, didn't pay off for me the same regard. And really, I mean that more in terms of like trying to already network with people in the industry already. Um,
Hmm.
Classmates and peers. I think that happens more organically, and I found those to be more valuable to me even to this day. Compared
Yeah,
to yeah, like just trying to cold email. That was like at the time that was kind of what I did, which is like cold emailing or going to different mixers at conferences or IGDA get-togethers.
I think networking didn't work for me when I was in college going into like breaking into the industry as an entry level. But after I got my first job as an intern, then it was all networking. It was just easy going from one company to another. I'm sure you felt the use of networking towards as you got into the industry, as opposed to when you were just breaking into the industry. Um, right. I felt more that was my reel and my resume, less the resume, more the demo reel, my portfolio that matters as in terms of getting a job, right? I mean, we'll
Yeah,
talk more about demo reels in a bit. We have so many questions, but I think you and I both, as an animator, me and as a character TD, you, both of us had to create demo reels. And back days, it used to be VHS tapes, but it was so valuable getting into the industry, right?
yeah, I totally agree. And the reason why I talk about networking in that regard is because at least at the time I was in college, like networking was kind of marketed or like kind of persuaded to me as being kind of like a shortcut to getting jobs when
Yeah,
really there's no shortcuts to getting where you had to put in the work and show it and show off what you can do
yeah,
ultimately in order to land those especially entry level is really
yeah,
important.
absolutely. All right, next question. How do you prepare for the industry as a college student? I mean, we've talked a little bit about demo reels and other things, but it's a very different life coming out of college life, going into an industry and the stress and everything. So tell us a little bit about your experience. How do you prepare for it, for the industry?
I think aside from like the coursework, it was kind of having a curiosity for once I kind of found the thing I really enjoyed doing and wanted to make a career out of it. I just got really curious and not just because even like in my coursework there wasn't like a lot of rigging classes per se. I think there's only like two in my curriculum, but yeah, just like having a constant curiosity, just like finding like little projects I could do on my own to just kind of take things further. Like there were a lot of books at the time to just kind of read and absorb and different websites. The other part is a lot more collaboration because especially in terms of like carrier TD work, it's a very dependent job because like I said, I'm not I can animate, but I wasn't like necessarily good at it. But there's animators in school at the same time as me that are like really like working day and night to like get their skills to a marketable level and be able to like collaborate with like different groups. I think goes a long way because one, it is a way to network because those people will eventually find jobs as well and can get and you can be in a know in that regard. But it also helps you work on your kind of collaboration ability because generally speaking, like at least in terms of games, it's especially for like games that when you're trying to like push the visual quality, it tends to be a group effort more often than not to get that going. And you'll end up with like much better work when you bring in other people to help you to find out where you can fit in as far as like your skill set goes.
Yeah, you bring up an important point, is which I try to stress on my students a lot, the collaborative work while you're in college. For those of us, you guys are all in City College, we have multiple projects going on. I have Project Basecamp, Professor Easter has Collaborative Club. So these are projects where you can start networking. I have always been I've always taken the college experience as in something that these are folks who's going to potentially work with you someday. So this is where your networking begins. Although we both talked about networking a few minutes ago, that for me at least, it was more useful after I broke into the industry, not before. So you can use our network in the meantime, me, Professor Easter, and Professor Goel, all of us. You can seek us out for any suggestions or input you guys may need at this time when you haven't got your foot in the door. Because again, we have a lot of alumni who currently work in the industry. So that's your network. And if you don't know them, you can know them through us. So I would highly encourage you guys. Also, tomorrow there's an alumni panel, just giving you a heads up on that since we talked about alumni. So you can join us there too. Sergio, I'm going to move on to the next question here. There's a lot to ask you today. For entry-level jobs and internships, what are you looking for in a candidate? Do you want to see generalist or skill-specific expertise? And I wanted to ask you this because things change from year to year. Trends change in the industry, and I wanted to see where it's at. There was a day when generalist was a thing; it was a big thing, and then a few years later, it was like everybody wanted skill-specific people. So I wanted to ask you, what are you looking for? Speak broadly. I want to hear how Insomniac does it, but also other companies. What's it out there like today?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is all those both all those things can work as long as you're able to show off really good work or and convey that either through your portfolio, your reel, or just like your general body of work. Because yeah, I think there's people could also can find unique skill sets or like things that are kind of up and coming. Like I think like CFX is something that's big in that regard, like being able to work in Houdini or Blender to come up with like these very whimsical kind of special effects that can work like beyond on top of rigging and stuff like that. So yeah, sometimes like especially for the intern, sometimes just showing like, oh, I'm like applying for an animation internship. I also have like some interest in like programming or game engine work with like in terms of technical animation, like being able to create like animation logic on top of that animation to make a character that actually is controllable, things like that. So some of it's just like showing like not just like a super specialized skill, because often coming out of school, you're kind of gonna be a little bit more generalized because you're learning so much at the same time until you find a thing that you want. So sometimes it helps to embrace that to some degree, but you also want to make sure you're focusing on things that are relevant to what you're applying to. So yes, like if you're applying for like an animation internship, you probably don't want to necessarily talk about like how much volunteer work you did, or uh, if it's not relevant to the job application, or if you're like a animator that can help us to model, that could still be useful because sometimes there's use for that as far as like being able to create like previs, and you can be more self-starting in that regard rather than waiting for characters to be ready to animate.
Oh, thank you. Next question I have is something that relates to City College students, and we are currently doing graphic design, motion graphics, and user experience here. And those who are attending today might wonder, how do I get a job in game industry? So the question is, do these subjects, graphic design, motion graphics, and user experience, or similar design areas, have a place in the game industry?
Yes. But to expand on that, I think that kind of goes to the previous question, as far as like how do these other skills kind of fall into applications, especially if you're not as specialized, if you're more uh, multi-skilled or multi-talented in a way. And this is kind of part of that because some of these are like pretty new in games, in the game industry specifically. I think the big one is user experience, because a lot more games are trying to um, be accessible in terms of like being able to cater to people with disabilities or different life experiences, and making sure the game accommodates yeah uh, their use case. And user experience is a very huge part of that, of like both like creating an awareness that, hey, this game, whatever we're trying to do in this game, isn't colorblind friendly. How do we figure that out? So there's a very interesting problem solving space that's there for user experience, as well as like the UI side, which is kind of intertwined depending on the job. Yeah, motion graphics. Yeah, that's another one that can kind of tie into marketing. Some games will use it in game as well, and same for graphic design. Like that, like a lot of that can have like things to use in terms of like yeah, marketing, publishing, even like the development itself. Because yeah, making things look cool is just always useful, especially in games. So yeah.
Thank you. That's the next question. What do you want to see in an applicant at a job interview?
It's a lot of it's looking for team fits. Because the whole usually by the time they get to the, at least as far as like application process goes for Insomniac, we already kind of have a good idea that the person is good at what they do because they've between like the resume, the portfolio. I think we also do testing sometimes. By the time they actually sit down in either like a Zoom or on sites, that yeah, we already know they're good at what they do. It's just figuring out like, are they team fit? So yeah, like a lot of that just give a feel for their personality. How do they communicate? What are their communication skills like as far as like their problem solving? Like what do they do when they get stuck on a problem? Do they kind of disappear until they figure something out, or do they try to reach out to um, get help from people that might be able to help in that space? So it's really looking for like filling out those soft skills to see if they're going to culturally fit and fit as far as the team goes. And
So you bring up
some
a
is
very
also just
important
like
point.
team. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you bring up a very important point about teamwork. But do you care to see the person fully ready for the job, or do you want to see potential?
It's a little bit of both. There's been cases where, yeah, someone's just a slam dunk as far as what they already can do, but I've also seen times where we kind of like get the general idea of what they're capable of, and there's a lot of potential in terms of like their ability, especially like I mentioned before, people have like multiple skill sets. Sometimes they might be a little bit underdeveloped in one area, but the area is like really interesting because it might fill in like a blind spot in our team. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we kind of bring them in because yeah, maybe they can like kind of focus on that for a bit while we're trying to make work for them in their primary skill. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. How do you prepare for an interview?
Oh, yeah, it's an interesting one.
Haven't done it in some time.
Well, yeah, well, because I'm both an introvert and yeah, in that regard. So usually my way to get around potentially being shy, coming off as shy in an interview is that I over prepare essentially by just making sure I have lots of questions about the company, like doing my research, especially if it's a case where I'm applying somewhere that I'm not as familiar with. Like I always saw like the job listing. The most I know about them is the job posting that I'm applying to. Uh, just taking that time to like understand that company, what they're about, what they worked on in the past. Is there any rumor or talk about what they're currently working on? Because that might affect how I approach the interview. Like if they're going in, if their games are more action oriented or like whimsical versus like a games that are more grounded or shooter based. That all has like implications on like how to approach the interview. So it's a lot of it's like research and just having questions in mind. And some of it's also like thinking about questions they'll probably ask you. Like pretty much every interview has the same questions. Like you can look them up online for like very common interview questions. And well, most interviewers do their best to make the interview as interesting as possible. There's always those fallbacks of like, where do you see yourself in 3 years and things in the center, et cetera, that sometimes those kind of come up like during like quiet parts of the interview. So just having some answers that are not necessarily rehearsed, but just having a general idea what you want to say, so you can make sure you're communicating what you need to communicate to uh, be applicable to the job. So you're not just kind of going completely off the rails, just rambling about something that's not necessarily relevant to what you're applying to. So
Have you
it's
ever been asked the strangest question at the interview that is not relevant to your job?
yeah, those will come up. There's always like very weird questions, or sometimes you just get questions that are yes, you'll get those questions that are like kind of weird. Not necessarily weird, but like they're just kind of different. Like they might ask like what games you're playing, what movies you watch, or things like that, like your hobbies. But the other thing to be prepared for, I think, is to know how to answer questions you don't have an answer to.
Exactly.
Because those will definitely come up, especially like when you're trying to apply to your first jobs. There's going to be like some disconnect initially as far as like your what they're used to interviewing, because they might be used to interviewing people that are more experienced in shipped games versus like interviewing for entry level. They still might it might be like a slip of the mind, or they might not so much like try to do a trick question, but they might just be trying to get a feel for your experience in a certain space. And it's okay to say you don't know. Of course, you don't want to say you don't know to every question, but just being okay with saying you don't know the answer and not being and not getting too flustered about it, I think is
Exactly.
important.
I mean, I was going to just add to that. All these years of being in the industry, hiring people, and then also myself interviewing, I'll say confidence is one of those things that's hard when you're just getting out the door to the industry. But when you're asked a question that you actually don't have the answer to, sometimes being honest and then still showing that, hey, I can learn things. I think projecting that vibe is great. But then also there are sometimes tricky questions asked. Like I was asked like silly things like, did I want to have lunch with my husband who also works across the street in San Francisco? I think that's just to get the vibe that does this person belong in my team? So some of these questions, it's just they're just normal people just like us. So I think having that get the fear out the door if you can. You don't have to have your nerves up. I think if you can work on that, that's great. I've never had trouble with interviews. I always talk like I know you for ages, but again, the overconfidence and those things are also can come across very cocky. So again, a little bit of soft skill is great, but then also knowing your things and backing up. But most importantly, doing research of what this company looks like, what do they do, who works there. All of that study is very important. I used to spend a lot of time looking up who works there, and then looking up their reels on YouTube. To be frank, though, there was a time when there was no YouTube. Then you'd have to ask your friends and other people who knew that person. So a little bit of research is important. I come from the artistic side as opposed to Sergio comes from the slightly technical artist side, so it's a little different. But it's a generic advice that we're both giving you in terms of how to go and address interviews.
Yeah, to rip off of that, just like the short answer is don't be whack and be yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
exactly.
like as long as you're just being yourself, I think you'll never go wrong. It's only when you're trying to overextend your personality in some ways or trying to be someone you're not that an interview
Exactly.
can start to go south for you.
There has been places where I've interviewed people who try to be overly funny. This is something like my job with you all. If I'm being constantly funny and cracking jokes, you're not gonna like my class, to be frank. It's just one of those things. It's just big trick because my funny thing may not be your funny thing. So again, just be a little bit under control of where your mood is at that time. It is nerve-wracking going in and meeting a panel of people, and if there's like 10 people in front of you or 6 people, it's even harder than one person, but it's never easy. So having that sort of confidence within yourself that, hey, you got this, but at the same time being yourself. I think that's the one thing I'd say. And you're never less than the other person, even if you get rejected. You can take that experience and do better at the next job. And sometimes you don't get the job just because not that you're not good. Sometimes you may not be the right fit. So knowing that and not letting down and actually keep on moving is very important.
Yeah, another good tip because of the nature of the industry and technology these days. A lot of times interviews happen over Zoom. So you can, when you prepare for an interview, you can actually keep stuff on the side of like if you have like a second monitor or something like that, you can like make notes for yourself to just have on the side. But on top of that, you can also screen share if you're doing a Zoom interview. So you might, if you have maybe if you're real, then like go into detail or something, maybe you can like have some stuff ready to screen share. That sometimes go a long way as far as communicating how you solve different problems. And yeah, this is a way to get feel like a visual interest. So we're not just talking heads the entire time.
And then again, when you go to an interview, don't forget your demo reel and your portfolio is vital in any digital media art subject, be it animation, games, graphic design, user experience. Your portfolio speaks for you. In our line of work, the resume at the beginning stages of your career doesn't mean as much as your work because they want to see potential that they can train this person and this person can belong in the team and then grow. I mean, I don't know, Sergio, you're going to show us your the reels in a bit. We'll see your videos. But when we started, my first demo reel, I don't think I'd like to look at it today. I got a job out of it, but it just, everybody's always embarrassed of the first reel that they got a job out of. Back then, I was super proud of it. Today, it's funny. But I'm just saying, all of we grow in jobs. So just having that, do your research, know the answers, most answers. If you don't know, that's okay. But at least go prepared and have the confidence and be yourself. Let's move on to the next topic, Sergio.
Sure.
All right. How do you dress for a game industry interview versus other interview industries? It's an important question.
Uh, it's I think the same rule applies to every industry. You look at the dress code of the people that go to work there, and you just go up a slight notch for the interview. That's part of where research comes in. Generally speaking, the game industry, like some game companies are actually more into tech than they are into games, so those might be a bit more formal. But you can't go wrong with smart casual. Like smart casual, just wearing something that's just not necessarily like just like your t-shirt and jeans, but like maybe like wear a polo shirt. If you're a guy, a woman, you can wear a simple blouse or like yeah, something like that. So yeah, it's just like uh smart casual, like, and you can look that up online just to like get some general ideas.
I would highly recommend that too as a woman. I hosted a panel this morning, and some of you were there. I went in jeans and t-shirts and a sweater. If I were going into games, I'd probably it'd be okay to wear a hoodie or a sweatshirt on a casual day, but not on an interview. So I'm not gonna go in a suit and tie. Definitely not for a game interview, but for academics, yes. So know your industry. Smart casual usually is a safer bet. It's sort of like the middle ground. It can't really go wrong. But look it up. There are tons of resources online nowadays. Now, if you ever needed suit and stuff, our college does offer that at the business and workforce department. But I don't think you ladies, all of you women, they're here now. I don't think you'd need that. All of you have stuff that I wear, for example, kind of like semi-casual, formal kind of things. The business casual stuff. You can mix them up. You're gonna still look great, but it's your confidence that you have to dress yourself with. It's very, very important.
Yeah, just kind of touching on technology side because we have some interviews happen over Zoom. Dress code still applies for Zoom interviews. Maybe you can get away with like just leave your top, but also keep your background in mind. Like don't use you have like a very offensive like meme background or like a meme profile picture. Maybe you want to clean it up before you jump into the Zoom call. And same, there's
Exactly.
also the option to blur out your background behind you. If you
Hmm.
if you're in a room that's a little bit more untidy, where you don't have time to tidy up your room in time, or if you're just in a crowded space where you might have people behind
Having
you.
good light on your face,
Yeah.
good audio. These are just very basic 101 of Zoom interviewing. Speaking clearly. These are very important things. Looking into the camera. Believe it or not, it does not come easy. Looking into the camera and talking. So just even do a demo. I have my husband always sitting there, but being my audience before I go into anything presentation related. So use your family, friends, whoever's there, so you could go through that. But let's keep on moving. We have so much to talk about, and there's videos to show, and we're going to be short on time otherwise. All right, next question. Do you care about resumes and cover letters? How about demo reels and online portfolio?
I would say resume and cover letters are pretty important. They kind of go hand in hand with your demo reel and portfolio, mostly because they help fill in the gaps or like they help answer some questions for each other. Like a demo reel, like if a demo reel is really good, I might want to know more about how this person kind of picked up these skills, like where they learned it from, and like seeing their education will help with that. Similarly, like if a resume has like a very long list of like really interesting skills that would make it HR like or like human resources be able to pick up on it right away. I want to see the real to see if those skills are actually being conveyed in a body of work, so to speak. So, and the cover letter is, I think, is really important, especially if you're still relatively new or trying to get your first job, because your resume is likely going to be a bit more on the lighter side, and your resume might be a bit on the shorter side. So your cover letter can help communicate more of your intentions as far as where you see yourself for a first job or internship. And yeah, that cover letter can go a long way in that regard in terms of you can kind of explain like why your resume is kind of smaller or like why your demo reel is a little bit smaller and where do you see your potential at is a good chance to really talk about that.
I think so. I think cover letter also gives you the indication that this person is actually passionate about the job. And there's a lot, your cover letter should not be a reflection of just your resume. It's because it's not a resume. So you should write it differently. There are a lot of online help nowadays on how to write a cover letter. So spend some time on it. It is a document that's sometimes overlooked, but absolutely important in any industry. I have, again, been part of games as well as academics, and I'll tell you the weight of the document is huge. In the beginning stages of your career, your resume is very short, and don't shy away from it. You don't need to be embarrassed about it. We've all gone through that. We all start somewhere. But your cover letter shows a lot of potential in terms of, do you have the spirit and do you have the passion for this job that you're applying for? So write it nicely, but we're not writing poetry. So again, look up how to write a cover letter, hit the points. Also have a checklist. Here's what I want to talk about in my cover letter. So it's very important. I actually, even today, after all these years, have my somebody I trust check it before I place my cover letter out. So always it's nice to have another pair of eyes in case you miss something. But online portfolio, very important for all of us visual artists. There are a lot of freebies now, free websites nowadays. You don't have to always buy your own your portfolio website. You could do Behance kind of websites, for example, very useful. There are a lot of options. We did a talk Monday. We did a lot of talks about this. Carol Easter did it, Professor Easter. You guys can go look it up. We have a lot of recordings from those. All right, moving on. For a demo reel, we do this in one of our classes, Sergio, DMA001. We build a demo reel at the end, and oftentimes students don't have enough. So I have them make it with the classroom material that we have. And I always tell them it's just, but let me just ask you this. Do you think class work is enough for a demo reel? Tell me your thoughts. And, how did you make yours?
Well, I guess to answer the question, I'll say generally it's not enough. Well, I can't speak for every like major. I do feel like most majors, once you can't find what you really want to do and specialize in, you don't really have enough class work to feel on a reel as far as like really stuff that shows like your best of your ability because you'll because a lot of your classes are gonna be like more foundational. You might have like one or two classes that are more advanced or like portfolio quality,
Yeah,
and you can't just have one or two like pieces. You kind of want to have three or four to build like where you're at.
decent. Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, you kind of like just find time to like take those projects to the next level and come up with your own projects or find collaborations you can get in on that will kind of coincide with like your when you want to start putting together like a reel for yourself.
I think so. I mean, for us, visual artists, see, classrooms are meant to just give you skills. You have to work on demo reel outside of classroom, which is a passion project, sort of. You have to put in a lot of time outside of classroom preparing your reel. Now, what we make in one of our classes it was going to be your start, and then so you're aware that you need to put this together. So every semester, at the end of the semester, you might want to think like, what do I put in my reel, and then spend some time working on it. But it's a vital piece of getting a job in visual arts. I can't um, state it enough on how important a visual reel is for us, which we call a demo reel. Be it an animator, a graphic design, user experience people, motion graphics people, we are all in the business of art, visual art, computer graphics. Our visual reel has a very big weight on it. Your resume may not have enough, but your reel will sell you as a candidate.
Exactly.
All right, Sergio, with that, you have something to show us.
Yeah, I'm happy to have some things I dusted off for you guys to show just to kind of show my trajectory.
Um, Let me start with this on the right, or which one do you want to start with?
I just start with the very first one because well, I'm not embarrassed to show
Is it
my
open?
college reel. Uh, the password is VG. I can text it to you
Yeah,
real quick. Check
text
the
it.
phone. Yeah, because while I'm not necessarily embarrassed by how old my reel is, I'm actually kind of embarrassed for Maya because it looks so different now compared to how it looked back then.
Okay, show me what you have. Give me the password. I don't, where did you put it?
Yeah, put it in your phone or text it to
Oh,
you.
on my phone. I was looking at chat. Okay, let me go in. And so guys, this is his first demo reel. So straight out of college. Let's take a look.
Yeah, I'm kind of going into this blank because I haven't looked at this reel end to end in a long time myself, and that website doesn't work anymore. But yeah, this is my reel.
So with this, I was just gonna ask you, did you have audio on this? Do you care about audio in your demo reels?
Yeah, they have audio for this. I I like audio personally, but that's never like a thing that is talked about in applications. Like this video does have audio. We're skipping this person. Where so it's if you have an audio that works and you like it, go for it. But if you're really stressing out or picking something for audio, like if you find yourself spending way too much time trying to find the perfect song to go off your reel, uh, there's probably better things you can focus on. But if you already have something in mind, then just grab it. Just make it like this. Don't spend too much time on it generally.
So what are you trying to show here? You're trying to showcase this is your student reel coming straight out of college. And I'm assuming you did all of these projects outside your classroom, spare time. And I'm noticing that you did a quadruped, a horse, you did a biped, a humanoid kind of thing, and you did a lot of other variety. So are you trying to showcase to people that, yes, I can do this, I can do that, and I can do that? Is it skill focused?
Yeah, for me, I was just really going in with the idea that it was really important to show range. Just looking at all the other reels that I was competing against, I just feel like so many reels are just focused on biped, and well, I think it's really important to show that at least at the time. I think nowadays bipeds are a bit more automated. I kind of wanted to get ahead of that and start showcasing more like machines, unique creatures like quadrupeds, and just like showing things that are a little less conventional, and trying to take those on because especially in school where you're not necessarily worried about while you're all worried about like you only have so much time in school, you're not as restricted as far as like what projects are given to you at the time, where you might be working on yeah, by working on Space Marines forever. Where before working on Space Marines forever, like just taking the time to like work on refreshing characters goes a long way. Or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Perfect. So thank you for sharing. It's not easy to show your first demo reel. It's always none of us like our first demo reel, but thank you for sharing. So this one is your recent work, I get it, right?
Oh yeah, this is just some of the marketing videos that came out. Oh yeah, thanks for the applause. But yeah,
I think I came back out of let me go back in. Hold on. This was the slide. Okay, let's look at your next reel that you have.
yeah, so this is the video I used to apply to Insomniac Games, and interestingly enough, Janali actually gave me a lot of feedback on this one in its early stages. It was still kind of the same idea. I worked at Massive Black and a tech company in when a Kickstarter game for quite a while, and I still feel like the formula of my original reel went a long way. So I just kind of took the same formula and built upon it. Where as far as both
Oh,
showing range, like while I did open it with a biped this time, it was more about the automation of the bipeds and still featuring like the automation can work for more creature type designs.
cool. I noticed, and you might want to talk about this, that our reels in the industry aren't really fancy. We don't do fancy effects and stuff. We keep the focus on the work itself. The work speaks for itself. But then we have a contact card. At the very beginning, there's the intro card, and then there at the very end, there's an outro card. And both of those have our information, who we are, what we do, and here's how to contact us. This is very vital. But is there anything else you'd include on your reels?
But just touching on that simplicity thing, I also meant to touch on even a resume and cover letter is really important to have. Just keep things very simple and let things speak and let your words speak for themselves. Don't get too caught up in like having like a very crazy graphic letterhead unless you're applying for graphic design or something similar to that. But if you're not applying to like a design job, then yeah, just keep your letterheads and stationery like pretty sweet and simple and let your skills speak for themselves. It goes for both like the real portfolio website and resume.
Cool. So let's move on. This one's it's almost done. Let's finish it.
Yeah, it's a pretty long reel, but you can kind
Okay,
of bend the
actually,
rules a bit
that's
after
a
you've been
great
working for a
question.
while.
How long a demo reel should be?
Uh, well, there is a hard and fast rule. Like you can, I think, if you're entry level or internship, see how your reel feels at 2 minutes. But you can go over if you feel like you need to go longer, but try to have an honest look at your reel to see if it's starting to feel kind of slow. Because that's really important because if your reel starts to feel
Drag
slow,
on.
you aren't going to finish it. And
Animators don't have 2 minutes. Animators at the beginning stage or any visual artist, 1 minute is a lot. So unless you have quality stuff that can keep people's attention for 2 minutes, I wouldn't do it. In this case, we're looking at a technical animator reel, so it's slightly different. But again, gauge it based off of what expertise you're in. And again, internet is a great source to tell you some of these things. And again, you can always reach us to. Let's play this next reel. Sergio, can you tell us what this is?
sure, this is one of the marketing videos that was part of the Spider-Man 2 launch. I think this was touching on all the things you can do in the updated game compared to the original. So
Okay, let's play.
let it do its thing. So it should be some gameplay, some cinematics, and some showing off the hero. So yeah, a lot of my work in the Spider-Man projects has been on Spider-Man himself, both Peter and Miles, and the work that as well as a lot of rigging work that went to like their suits that you could customize.
This game's pretty cool.
I don't know if you want to maximize it so we can.
It's really
Well,
neat.
yeah, so the work that I worked on was like the wingsuit, a little bit of yeah, Peter and Harry in their civilian outfits.
The
same for
suits, the character
outlaws.
suits, and the gameplay design.
Yeah. As well as like a lot of defamation work. Like even though don't necessarily use AI, like machine learning was a big part of the project. As far as coming up with like more higher fidelity deformation systems for the characters in order to get muscle sims to happen at real time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I muted the video, guys. I was gonna say when we talk about gameplay, it's the designs of the little pieces of animation that goes in the game. That's what we mean by gameplay. It's what you're playing by pressing the button. Some of the moves in there, the flips and jumps and all the reactions to the hits, those are fantastic. And I would like for you guys to start looking at them as you're watching this video. There's just all different pieces of animation coming together.
Yeah, if you want to screw up to like maybe like 1/4, and I'll show off some of the suits that we worked on.
These are cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I was kind of like the both like the point person for to label out these suits, but it was also a thing that the entire team and rigging got involved in as far as setting up all the suits. So it was both like coming up with like a workflow and also being able to make the workflow something that anyone can do.
Cool. All right, next one. You have two more videos. I want to make sure we get to it. We have 7 minutes. Which one do you want to play first?
Uh, I guess we could play the remastered one first, just to get a Spider-Man 2 break and see Spider-Man in his more humble beginnings.
Okay.
So yeah, I worked on both the original Marvel Spider-Man for PS4 as well as also did a lot of work on the remaster. In the original, my work was pretty much purely like heroes and suit focused. And in the remaster is a little bit more interesting where because everything was already kind of like there, a lot of my work was actually touching on a little bit of like every character and plussing them up a bit more in order to make them look good in one of the newer systems. So it ended up being like a bit more of an interesting in its own regard as far as rigging goes, because kind of like looking at old rigs and kind of both remembering what they were and like how to take a little bit further in a way that didn't get in the way of like the original game look and
So what's
feel.
this next video we're about to look at? It says story trailer. Is it about the story now? What's your role in this?
This is just more cinematic focused version of the Spider-Man 2, so it shows more of like the actual like cinematics of the game. So
Okay.
it kind of shows like the polish work we did for like yeah these very like slow story moments.
Did you work on the character facial animation and that sort of thing?
That was by someone else. Like my work was mostly body and suit focused.
Okay. Was Spider-Man able to change his suits in this game?
Yes, we
And you
have
gave control to the player for that?
yeah, I think you can unlock like 80 something suits. It's a lot of suits at this point in the game for both the Spider-Man. So yeah, a lot of work went into that. And I also happened to work on that robot dog that you saw very briefly in that one shot.
I was going to ask you about the helicopters too. Are those rigged?
Yeah, pretty much everything you see is rigged, not by me, but just by a very talented team. But like I said, like yeah, in addition to like the bias work, I also worked on a couple of mechanical creatures, like the dog that's in the game. And yeah,
Pretty cool animation. All right. So wanted to ask you a couple last questions. Do you have any specific tips for our students on how to land their foot in the door?
uh, I think the specific thing is just figure out what you want to do and just go for it, essentially. Eventually someone will notice. I think it's and as long as you just keep at it. So I think that's really important. If you're into social media, that can help out to some degree if that's like the thing you want to do. As far as like that could be like a body of work in a way or help you get into the habit of showcasing your work. Like not so much like being on like X or Twitter or Facebook and constantly posting stuff. But like just getting the habit like maybe like just demoing things on YouTube or demoing your work on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Um, ArtStation is a really good place to eventually put your portfolio on. I know Wix is pretty popular too, but ArtStation looks a little bit more professional, so to speak.
Our station for games, and then Behance would be equivalent for flat art or motion art, right? Or where is that?
Well, that one I'm a little bit familiar about. I don't know about ArtStation really off the top of my head. That seems to be the
I've been hearing about ArtStation a lot from my EA friends who's been hiring based off of ArtStation portfolio a lot. So I feel like it's a new thing in the games area.
yeah, it's kind of replacing being with because I think like back when we were graduating, we had to like build our own websites from scratch and like buy a domain and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
There's more of these like types of sites that like sites that already cater to optimize for just showcasing your portfolio and body of work. And our stage is just really good for that because it both makes your reel easy to see, but if you like a lot of work progression, it makes it just very easy to browse through your collection of work without doing a lot of clicking. So it's very cool.
Cool. All right. Is there any questions, you guys? Anyone has a question? Okay. All right. We are right on time. We have 1 minute left, and I would like to thank Sergio for coming in and spending an hour of your time with us. And I want to share with you all, students, this is the way you can connect with both of us. And I just wanted to thank you all for coming and joining this talk today. I'm going to stop the recording in just a second. You can take a screenshot of this if you'd like. We're both available on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so my
Thank you.
pleasure to be here and I enjoyed appreciate all your guys' time. So yeah.
Thank you so much. You have a chat message, Sergio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
enjoy seeing it.
Yeah, Jackie. You guys can unmute yourself and speak if you'd like. It's okay. Ghana, Ellie, and Jackie, you guys feel free. There were people here who have left since. Let me stop sharing the screen just a second. All right, so why don't we call it a day? It's 4 o'clock sharp, and I want to keep the time. And Sergio, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
And yeah, if you guys have questions, you now know where to reach out. I do check
Contact you. We sure
my
will take up
email.
that
So
offer. Thank you.